Well, we turn now to the residential housing market. Data out yesterday showing that builders broke ground on more single-family homes for a fifth straight month in July. But others are concerned, especially taking into account data on prices, foreclosures, and underwater mortgages. Well, joining us with his latest forecast is Robert Shiller, economics professor at Yale University and Case-Shiller Index creator. Professor Shiller also recently published a book on consumer confidence called Animal Spirits, and he comes to us from New Haven, Connecticut. So, Professor Shiller, we're really trying to make sense of what's going on in the housing market. As you know, over the last week or so, we've had a lot of data about mortgages potentially being underwater. The data doesn't look good. We talked with Karen Weaver of Deutsche Bank earlier today, and to me it says we're not at the bottom. What do you think?
Well, it's tough to tell right now. With the S&P Case-Shiller indices, last month we reported the first increase in home prices that we've seen in almost 3 years. It was a single month, and on a seasonally adjusted basis it wasn't an increase. But the simple increase certainly stands out as a change in momentum, but we can't be sure. It's only 1 month, and it comes at a time when there's a lot of changes going on. I don't know that we can trust it as a sign of a turning point.
All right, something that Karen talked about, and I want to play you a soundbite from that interview that Matt did with Karen Weaver, and she talks about psychology and the importance. Let's listen to that.
If you look at the two main reasons people say they're not buying a home, one is they expect prices to fall further. The second is they're worried about losing their job. If people believe that prices have stabilized, if they regain some confidence in the economy, then that psychology is very important to the housing market, where momentum is everything.
All right, Professor Shiller, you dissect the housing market day in and day out. Psychology crucial here, in your view as well?
Well, it's been one of my themes for many years,
right,
that psychology drives the whole economy, not just now. That's typical. Most of the fluctuations in the aggregate stock market are due to psychology. They're not forecasts of anything, well, except maybe forecasts of psychology. So it's no surprise, and in this tumultuous period, it's going to be especially true.
All right, do you feel like though psychology has changed or has turned in your view?
Well, the very yeah, I mean, definitely, it's always changing. But the thing that is very striking is in the last few months, the confidence indexes have gone up. And it seems like this green shoot story has really been told and retold a million times. And so confidence is tentatively back. I say tentatively because I don't think that people really have it firmly in mind. They're hearing these good news stories, and they're in kind of a wait-and-see attitude.
All right, we have a viewer who wrote in. I think he wrote into Matt. It was Chris, and he basically posed the question, you know, how long are homeowners who have foreclosed sidelined from buying again? I mean, this plays into that whole psychology thing. I mean, how do you think that's going to play out? You lost a home. If it got foreclosed, are you going to be shy about getting back into the market? And let's not forget that maybe the bank's not even going to want to loan you money to let you go out and buy another home.
Right. Well, you know, the theme had been that home prices always go up. That's theme A. Theme B, ownership society, that we are proud to be Americans and we're a nation of homeowners. Both of these themes are wavering now. And in particular, we're seeing books coming out about small is beauty, the beautiful, the joys of renting. And people are starting to question the whole premise. And that's something that might weaken the market.
Do you look at, though, Professor, how long people actually are sidelined on average after they're foreclosed upon? I mean, clearly the bank isn't going to give them a loan again, and they've got to find another place to live while they build their credit score back up.
Well, I don't have data on it, but I think you're exactly right that people feel burned. You know, it's like you get a divorce. Most people don't remarry right away. It was exactly that kind of bad experience.
Let me ask you just about something that we heard from Michael Arenstein, a guest on our show earlier, talking about animal spirits, talking about, in his view, the fact that people don't change. He said if you look at children of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we have always bought what we wanted, and to the extent that we're able to, we'll continue. What do you think about that as someone who studies psychology and its effect on the market?
Well, there are gradual changes. You note that the saving rate has been declining ever since around 1980. So we've had 30 years of decline in saving. And there's some cultural underpinning to that. I think it has something to do with confidence, exaggerated confidence, sort of a sense that getting ahead is more, or making a show of living in a big house and doing all the right things was more important than having a stash somewhere. Now that's the kind of attitude that could come back, the old attitude for the wisdom of saving. We'll wait and see. We don't. It's really a question of whether this recession just ends and everything comes back. Then maybe it won't be so traumatic. But if it drags on, it might have some permanent changes.
All right, Professor Shiller, hold on for a second. We're going to take a break and come back and talk some more. We are talking with Robert Shiller at Yale University. It's about 20 minutes after. Stick around. More on housing and the outlook when we come back.
Supply is going to continue to grow because we know foreclosures are growing. We see delinquencies. Those are rising rapidly. They want to turn into foreclosures.
All right, welcome back. Karen Weaver, we talked with her earlier. Actually, Matt talked to her. And let's get back to our current guest. We're talking with Professor Bob Shiller at Yale University. So, Professor Shiller, in terms of delinquencies and foreclosures, I mean, when does it end in your view?
It should have ended a year ago. I wish, in my book, Subprime Solution, I said we should have done what we did in the 30s, create a homeowners loan corporation and do massive support of distressed mortgages. In the 30s, they subsidized 20%. They rescued 20% of all mortgages in the country. So we haven't done that, and this continues to grind on, and it continues to be a source of loss of confidence, and it's fundamental to the whole economy. It's a big problem that hasn't been ended.
Wouldn't you be concerned about the moral hazard of going in and rescuing everybody who's underwater or who's defaulting on his mortgage?
You weren't concerned with the financials, though.
Absolutely. In my book, if I might add, I had a proposal that we would do something analogous to what the Homeowners Loan Corporation did. You rescue the mortgages and you change the mortgage institutions to help prevent this in the future. So I have a new kind of mortgage called a continuous workout mortgage that would have a workout built in that's much more sensible than the chaos we're going through now.
I'm hoping that you send a copy of this book to the White House and Congress.
I have.
Any talks with people in Washington on actually doing something about this? Because we've seen proposals to try and save Americans who are losing their homes for the last, since the Bush administration, but it doesn't seem like a lot of it is really working out.
Well, we have some very good people, and particularly in the White House, and I've talked to some of them. I think it's kind of hard to get things like this going. It's what I've been arguing is that we have to develop a financial solution to these problems. That means develop a better financial infrastructure. This whole mess is a failure of financial institutions. And we don't want to think that the government is the solution. It had to put out the fire, but we have to think, how did this happen, and how can we stop it from happening in the next... What we've been doing is putting people in a very risky situation. They borrow 90 or 100% of the value of the house. If the value of the house goes down, they're wiped out. That's happened to over 15 million Americans now. It was a bad situation that we created, not applying finance principles properly.
All right, so I think everybody agrees it was a bad situation that led to kind of where we are today. And you obviously are saying that maybe some more things need to be done to address this problem. If we don't, Professor Shiller, how much of a drag is it going to be on economic growth potentially here for the next 6 to 12 months, maybe another year or two?
Yeah, well, right now things seem to be improving. I think it's very hard to predict the economy precisely because the psychology is like a big feedback or a social epidemic that can just turn like any epidemic. But I suspect that we're going to have weakness for some years. We may see an end of the recession, but it will be a disappointing recovery. And the problem is that people are not eager to start spending again, and businesses are not eager to hire people and start capital expenditure. So those are based on underlying expectations, and the underlying expectations are not great, and they may turn down.
Do your expectations, though, get boosted into next year as we see more and more of the stimulus dollars flowing into this economy?
Well, I'm glad we have the stimulus package, absolutely, but I think it should have been bigger. I think the biggest thing that the government has done is to bail out the banks. If we hadn't done that, we would be in a serious problem. So I think the government as a whole gets a pretty good marks for having staved off disaster, but they haven't gone far enough to bring back prosperity.
All right, we got to run. Professor Shiller, good to get some time with you. Thank you.
My pleasure.